Hello, everybody. This is Kelsey.
And this is Reese.
And welcome to our first ever corrections episode. Woo.
Woo.
So one of the things that we had a big intention to do was correct things that we had done wrong. As we've said in our first couple of episodes, neither of us are experts. We do some research. We try to get a general understanding of what we're saying.
Yeah, very general.
But because of that, it can lead to these situations where we have things that we've said that are very wrong. So the intention of this is really just to address those. Now, one of the things that you as our audience can do is help us out. If we say something that's clearly wrong, please let us know.
Yep, put it in the comments and we'll use it next time. For this one, we are just kind of winging it based on things we discovered after the episode was finished recording.
Right. So as we're listening and as we're editing our podcast, we sort of just take notes of what we've said that sounds stupid. Usually, if it sounds stupid to you or if it sounds stupid to us, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Not always, but usually.
Yeah. We definitely found some cases of that here.
Yes. Without further ado,
here it is, our corrections.
So our intention for these corrections is to do them once a month, every 2 episodes, presuming that we say as much stupid stuff as we think we're saying.
I don't think we're in any danger of not meeting that requirement.
No, we say a lot of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Part of that is hilarious as we're going back in post and listening to it. So we hope that for you, you'll also get a kick out of some of the things that we've said that is just glaringly stupid. We should have known better.
You keep saying we. Your stuff is going to be little corrections. Mine is going to be the glaringly stupid stuff, I think.
You know, there's no stupid people or stupid questions on the podcast, despite what Reese might have you believe. So first up, the first correction I have is just a little one from our very first episode. We're going to stick with a chronological timeline for the most part for these. But the first one was I said that rainforests only exist along the equator, which people probably believe. And in that moment, I believed it. I know better.
And I believed you. So
one of my personal problems in my life is that I speak with a lot of confidence. So I'll say things and people will believe me, but I will have no basis in fact. I will be completely making that thing up. And that's okay. As long as I go back and I censor myself, it's fine.
Right. Right. But in that moment, you have everyone believing.
That's true.
That's true.
So anyways, rainforests are completely dependent on how much rainfall that ecosystem gets, believe it or not. It has nothing to do with the temperature or the level of, latitude?
Yeah, is it latitude?
I think so. How far away from the equator you are. Yeah. We're going to need a corrections episode for our corrections episode.
We're actually talking about that later in the episode too, so I'll have to quick figure that out.
We'll have it figured out by then. Essentially, like I said, rainforests are completely dependent on rainfall. It's just like a desert. The top 2 largest deserts in the world are Antarctica and the Arctic. Because it's based entirely on rainfall.
I knew that, actually.
Reese knows his geography.
I can go back after any of these facts that you say with authority and say, yep, I knew that already. That doesn't mean I knew it.
It's not a risky game.
Yeah, no. I did know that one, though.
Yeah, so it's based on rainfall. There are temperate rainforests in the Pacific Northwest, so a lot of mountains, a lot of times will have rainforests on them as well. But it's not that all rainforests exist on the equator. Now we've all learned that.
Yeah.
We can move on to correction number 2.
Good.
This first episode had a lot of corrections. We were really getting our sea legs, trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
And it shows. Number 2 is probably going to be the funniest of the corrections.
Don't pull punches, Kel.
I'm hoping that in post we can add in a little, maybe just like a 30-second snippet of when this happened in the first episode.
Yeah, we'll put in a clip right here.
Cool.
Box jellyfish is like my biggest fear in the world.
Why?
They can ascend like I forget what the fact is.
And now we have Reese remembers facts.
Yeah. box jellyfish can ascend like at like 200 to 300 miles an hour or something like that up through the ocean.
That doesn't sound right.
No.
Reese just said that box jellyfish can swim at
200 to 300 miles an hour.
in absurd speed.
which is I believe faster than the fastest animal on the planet, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The fastest animal is a peregrine falcon, and it dives at over 200 miles an hour, but nowhere near 300.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Reese.
You see why I was so afraid of them.
Yes.
That would be horrifying, right?
A box jellyfish rocketing up from the bottom of the ocean at 200 to 300 miles an hour is terrifying. I understand where Reese's fear comes in. In reality, box jellyfish swim at 4.5 miles an hour. For our English friends or anybody else who's on the metric system, that's about 7.5 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
That's not so fast.
That doesn't sound right. Are you sure about that?
I'm positive.
Yeah. Okay.
I like to think that Reese probably collected this fact when he was a little bit younger, maybe sitting at home watching the Discovery Channel, and it was one of those really alarmist Animal Planet or Discovery Channel shows.
Yeah.
Where they have you believing that the scariest thing in the world is a box jellyfish that can swim at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But in reality, these things just float.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what it was. It was they threw around words like attack and like killer box jellyfish. I'm just cowering on the couch. I'm never going in the ocean.
Our intention is not to freak you out.
No.
Like Animal Planet and Discovery Channel tend to do.
Yeah.
Man. Staying in the ocean for correction number 3 is I made a comment. This was just a little one-off comment. Reese doesn't like fish because they don't blink.
Yeah. Untrustworthy.
I said that sharks blink. Now, what I said was that sharks blink, which isn't true. They don't blink like humans or dogs or birds where they're blinking to clear things from their eyes and to keep their eyes lubricated. Sharks are in water. They don't need extra lubrication. They can use water to rinse their eyes out. But sharks do have an eyelid that they will shut while they're attacking their prey. They also do it, I think, while they're fighting with other sharks, depending on the species.
Is this like a third eyelid?
No. But yes.
Okay. It's 50-50.
It's 50-50. It's one of those.
Okay. Do we need to do a corrections for our corrections?
That's
episode?
what I'm saying. Yes, we're going to need to. No, it's not a third eyelid because they don't have 2 eyelids that they blink like humans do. They have one that is like a third eyelid that brushes across the top of the eye. So it's like a dog or a bird or a cat that has a nictitating membrane, that membrane that shoots across the eye that you can sometimes see before they actually blink. It's like that, except for the shark doesn't have eyelids that it blinks over the top of that.
Okay. But the shark can still see through it or no?
I don't believe so.
All right.
Number 4. This one's going to require a little bit more discussion. I made a couple of sweeping generalizations about pandas that I'm not proud of. I, in general, am not a huge fan of pandas. I think that they get a lot of research money, and they're one of those animals that I think would have gone extinct if humans hadn't existed on the planet. Regardless of us destroying their habitat, which is the number one reason that their numbers are shrinking. But if we weren't here to destroy their habitat, pandas would have been extinct.
Yeah.
The only reason they still exist is because humans protect them.
Why is that?
They eat bamboo. I was actually reading a lot about this because I wanted to be able to discuss this more at length. Pandas used to eat more meat.
Okay.
And throughout the millennia have adapted to only eating bamboo because they don't have a whole lot of meat that they can access. In the parts of China that they live, there just isn't a lot of big prey that they can take down. There is a lot of bamboo. Now, I made a comment about how bamboo is all fiber, which isn't false, but bamboo also has a pretty high protein content. Now, is it a high enough protein content for a bear to survive? Yes, because the pandas live. They are surviving. But also, they have to eat so much of that crap in a day. They spend all of their time eating. So I have a lot of really complicated feelings about pandas.
That it makes it, so they eat so much that it makes them sort of useless otherwise.
I feel that way, yes.
Yeah. Are you just prejudiced against pandas?
Maybe I am. Don't at me.
Yeah. Okay.
Please don't at me in the comments. But some of the things I mentioned was that the reintroduction program has completely failed. In the past couple of years, China has put a lot of effort into revamping this reintroduction program. So I said that they pulled all of these pandas out of the wild, and then they were breeding them in captivity, and that it was a failure. In reality, they only pulled a few pandas out of the wild.
Okay.
The breeding program in the last 30 years, they've produced over 1,000 pandas, but none of those pandas have gone back out into the wild. They tried to release one, and within a year, he was attacked by other wild pandas and killed because it had lived in captivity. For the past 5 generations, that animal lived in captivity, and they did their best. They tried to teach it how to be a real panda, but it could not survive on its own.
Yeah.
So now they're focusing more on combining populations of existing pandas. So what that means is that China is developing a nature reserve that is about 3 times the size of Yellowstone National Park. Now, this is intentioned to connect 6 isolated panda populations and try to get them interbreeding. So a problem with isolated populations, especially if they're small, is that they aren't getting enough genetic variability to survive on their own. So even if they have ample resources, there's plenty of food, there's plenty of shelter, there's plenty of everything they need, in these areas, if there's a small number, a small population, the genetics will go to hell.
Yeah.
And the animals will develop a bunch of genetic disorders and not be able to survive.
Well, they're basically inbreeding, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So the intention of this reserve is to allow these populations to be interbreeding. I'm excited that they're taking a different approach to it because I think having a couple thousand or over 1,000 pandas in captivity and the wild population shrinking and shrinking, not what you want.
Yeah.
Not being able to release any of those captive bred pandas into the wild is not ideal.
No.
But they are doing their best. I love it when people can get together for a cause and do what they can to really further populations like pandas. And if we can support them and they continue to survive, great. I can deal with that. But I just let my issues with pandas take over that whole section. My mouth ran rampant.
Yeah.
And I said a lot of stuff.
Panda hater.
No. So that leads us to my final correction. Reese has a couple corrections from our first episode as well. But my final one is just more of a clarification about some of the things I said about bison. So I was unsure of what bison were eating and sort of how they contributed to a natural landscape. I knew that they were important, and I had some of the information, but I just didn't have all of it. So to clarify, bison do eat grasses. They're grazers, which means that they're going to be eating a lot of food. So typically grazers are going to be eating things like grasses. Elephants are grazers. Bison are grazers. These really big animals are all going to be eating things that are really abundant, like grass. Now, prior to European settlement, bison were grazing the prairie lands. They were eating the grasses, which were allowing for more prairie plants to thrive. But basically, this just allowed for a really healthy biodiversity. So these prairies, they had a lot of different species living in them in terms of plants, which allowed for a lot of different animals to be living there. Bison are super important, and I mentioned this a little bit in our first episode, but I'm really excited to see bison reintroduction in the U.S.
Yeah.
While I was researching a little bit further, I found that there are reintroduction programs in 8 U.S. states and also in Mexico. So the hope is that we can really just combine a lot of these herds and we can continue to grow these herds and help our natural prairies, which are struggling right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it seems like it's going well so far, right?
Yeah, we talked about this as well, but the first wild bison in over 100 years was born in 2014 or something like that.
Yeah.
So we're moving and grooving.
Cool. That's great. So my first correction has to do with right ascension, which we were talking about in relation to syzygy, or the aligning of celestial bodies, usually planets. When we were talking about it, you asked me a question, Kels, about Earth, about the North Pole of Earth being 0 or 90 degrees and the equator being 0 degrees.
Yes.
Which would measure longitude, right? The degrees of longitude.
That would measure degrees of latitude, right?
Yes.
If 90 degrees, or if the point were in the center of the Earth and the equator was 0 degrees.
Right.
I think that's how they measure latitude.
What?
The equator is 0 and the North and South Pole are 90 degrees.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not correcting you. I just had a mind-blowing moment.
A discovery.
A discovery. Something you should know about me is that I went to public school, and my teachers were very nice people.
Yeah.
But if I did not have an interest in learning something, I didn't learn that thing.
Yeah.
So I had an interest in space, and I wanted to learn about other planets, but something like latitude and longitude, didn't really care.
Well, Kels, so if measuring longitude, if that was it, latitude?
Latitude
I mixed up.
goes
now.
up and down. Longitude is the lines that are long.
Yes.
Across the whole
right.
Earth.
Yes, that's the mnemonic device. They're long up and down, right? Okay. So 0 degrees from, what is it? Is it the prime meridian?
Don't ask me.
Sorry, public school, sorry.
Reese went to a very prestigious private school, so he has no excuse.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Except my underachieving nature, maybe. Okay, so yes. So longitude is up and down. Latitude is like east to west. No,
Side to
wrong.
side.
Damn it. Still, I'm mixed up. We're overthinking it.
Yep.
I'm looking at a picture, and I can see what they are on the picture. I just can't clearly put it into words, which doesn't help you, the listener.
You know what? Y'all have Google. I know you do.
Yeah, and you know what? We're gonna link a diagram because it makes about 100 times more sense.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Reese hasn't shown me this diagram, so I'm with all of you.
Yeah. Okay. So initially, what I was talking about is right ascension would basically be like latitude. The equator is 0. North Pole is 90.
Yes.
Right? Not the case. It's actually
Sweet.
It's actually more like longitude, where it's a degree along the equator.
Okay. So it's like if you were to tie a string around the center of the Earth, any point along that string would be right ascension.
Yes, sort of.
Oh, crap.
Now, if only it could be that simple, because it's much more complex than that. You have to take into consideration the tilt of the Earth, because it's not it's not the Earth's equator actually, or like the North and South poles. It's how it's oriented in space based on right, yeah. Which every explanation I've read, to me, it seems totally arbitrary. I'm sure there's some logic behind it, but I don't understand it. So
who would be the people who would know this? Like, I'm stuck on an astrophysicist.
Yeah,
But
an astrophysicist,
go ahead.
astronomer.
If we have any people listening who can better explain this, give us a call. We'll put you on the podcast.
I'm sure any sort of like 4th grade science teacher could explain it better than we can.
Not mine.
Hopefully.
I don't remember my 4th grade science teacher, but I'm sure they were a lovely person.
Yeah.
I hope they're not listening to this podcast.
Them being a nice person is not under scrutiny here, though. All right. So, yeah. So you have to take into account the axis of the Earth.
Okay.
So it's right ascension based on its orientation in space.
Okay.
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 That's the simple version. I won't get too much more into that. I'll link a couple of resources on the page. Moving right along. planetary alignment. We were talking about, you mentioned something when we were kids, that there was a planetary alignment of some of the brighter planets in the sky.
And I was concerned that I got it mixed up with Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
Right, which, would be easy enough to do. And I said, no, you're wrong. When in actuality, you were totally right. That did happen. So recently, it happened back in October. What is this? October 2017 or 2018? I forget which one. 2018. The 5 brightest planets aligned in the sky: Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. They're all visible in the night sky at the same time. They basically line up in right ascension along the equator, as viewed from the equator.
So if we were standing at the equator, would they be in a horizontal line?
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like.
Okay, which would make sense.
Yeah.
A vertical line from Earth doesn't seem logical to me for some reason.
Right.
But I'm not a person who studies planets.
Well, because, and that's what that, so that's part of if you're thinking of the 9 planets, the 8 planets, I suppose now.
In Lara Croft Tomb Raider, it's a vertical lineup.
Right.
I just want to make that clear.
Okay, but it's not the planets in our solar system, is it?
I think it is. I could be wrong.
Which makes 0 sense, because if you're looking along the equator, they should line up horizontally, because that's how the planets in our solar system are oriented.
Right. Look at any diorama and you will see that they are horizontally aligned with us.
Right.
It's not a straight up and down line.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not perfect exactly, but it's essentially, it's not going to be north to south.
Right. But was there a planetary alignment before 2018?
It happens all the time, apparently. Not every day. But more frequently than I thought. And the one I think you're probably mentioning is the planetary alignment of May 5th, 2000. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn were all positioned basically in a line with the sun.
That would make sense.
Yeah. So that was a big deal. That's a pretty great example of syzygy too.
Sweet.
It's not just 3, which is kind of the commonly accepted. It's 3 or more, but usually you look for it in just 3 of them.
Okay.
This is 6 planets and the sun. So
right.
Pretty cool. So good job, Kels.
Thanks. For those of you here for more Lara Croft Tomb Raider trivia, the movie came out in 2003, so it's entirely possible that throughout my childhood, I just mixed those 2 events together.
Yeah.
Because I'm certain that my parents took me to see the alignment. Yeah. That we went and we watched it. Because there was a period of time where I was super into planets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know we were watching all of the eclipses and fun things.
Was that part of your love of Tomb Raider?
I don't know. I think, what's her name? Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
And Daniel Craig.
Yeah, that's right.
Made up my love.
Doesn't he have a pretty phony American accent in that one too?
I think Angelina Jolie has a British accent and Daniel Craig has an American accent.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah. And neither of them are very good.
I'm going to leave that for the audience to decide.
That's fair. Who am I to criticize too? It's not like I can do a good American or British accent.
That's fair.
All right. So on to your next correction, Kels.
Yeah, so this brings us to episode 2. I have much fewer corrections from episode 2, which is good because it's a presentation that I mentioned I give for work. Part of my job is teaching people the things that I used on that second podcast. So I was concerned that I'd be going back and listening to things and it would be wrong. Thankfully, there's only one little thing. I was talking about how rats and mice urinate while they're running. And that is how kestrels, specifically European kestrels, can see where they're going around to. I said it's almost like Google Maps.
Yeah.
Which would be cool, right? I said that the reason that they're urinating is because they don't see very well and they use it as sort of blind mice leading the other blind mice. In reality, they're urinating for a variety of reasons. They have vision good enough to see where they're going. It isn't as if they're incredibly blind. They're not relying entirely on their sense of smell. They're not a mole. So what they are urinating for is communication primarily.
Okay.
So sexual readiness, they're telling either male or female mice if they are ready to be impregnated.
Yeah.
Or if they have a lot of high testosterone, male mice and rats will urinate more frequently to try and draw in some of the female counterparts.
Does that work?
It does.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's good that humans don't rely on those kinds of mating things. Some of the other things that they're going to urinate for is to basically give out a sense of prowess. So like a big testosterone-filled male is going to pee around everything, sort of like your male dog will pee on trees and pee along its territories to warn other dogs that they're entering into the territory. Mice and rats do the same kind of thing.
Sure.
But it doesn't exist as a way for them to lead each other. This isn't like the preschoolers who are all holding on to the jump rope as they weave themselves through like the zoo.
Yeah.
That's not what this looks like, but they're urinating for a variety of reasons. And functionally, it's still the exact same.
Yeah.
The Kestrels are still seeing where they're urinating, where they're going, where they've been.
Okay.
And that's really just, like, that's not a huge correction, but I did want to clarify.
Yeah. The principle still remains that the Kestrels hunt based on that.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
I'm also not sure if I made it totally clear. We're not sure if American Kestrels do that. So in North America, we have a variety of Kestrel that looks very similar to the European Kestrel, which in Europe they're called common Kestrels. I'm only referring to them as European so that we can differentiate between the American and the common. But it's not certain that they do that in America. We know for sure they're doing it in Europe, so it would make sense that some birds are utilizing the same thing in America, but it hasn't been tested, and I can't speak to that anymore.
Okay.
Do you have any other corrections?
I do. I have two more.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Bring them on.
So, countries with central banks you asked me about. When we were talking about cryptocurrency, I was talking about the difference between how cryptocurrency works and how funds based on a central currency system work, a country with a central bank.
Right.
Yeah. So, you asked if every country had a central bank. I sort of said, yeah, I think so. And after researching it more extensively, that's still pretty much my answer. Everything I could find, it was sort of conflicting. There are some pretty wild conspiracies that have to do with like one family owning all this, trying to acquire all the central banks.
This is just an aside.
Yeah.
I would love for Halloween to do a conspiracies episode.
Yeah, I would love that too.
If that's something you guys are listed or you are interested in, please let us know because we would love to do it.
Yeah, maybe we'll tackle this conspiracy, the one family owning all the central banks.
This can be our teaser.
Yeah.
For our conspiracy podcast.
Yeah, so just wait 8 more months and we'll have that out to you. Yeah, so for the most part, yes, all of the developed nations do. There are some island states that don't, kind of. A lot of times, like Iran and Afghanistan, North Korea kind of make some of those lists, but it's a pretty inconclusive list. If you have more clarification on that one, though, please illuminate us, because all of the resources I found led me to believe that nobody really knows.
And I suppose in countries where the governments are a lot less transparent, it might be difficult to know for sure
Right.
how much of the central bank actually exists, how much of it's sort of a figurehead.
Yeah, and in the episode, I kind of mentioned that, like, the structure of a central bank looks a lot different depending on the country you're in. Some of them have more than one. It's some of the systems get really complex, and then you plug that into the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund and what it looks like on a global scale, and it's a lot more confusing. So I don't know is the answer.
Cool. You know what? I feel like that's just as valuable.
Right.
Being able to say that we were wrong.
Yeah.
And that we don't have the answers.
Well, and I guess it's more that there's not one neat answer.
Right.
Without going into explaining the whole international financial system, which I'm not going to do. You're welcome.
I was going to say, I won't tell you that I'm appreciative of that. Because if it's something you're interested in, I'd love to chat about it. But
yeah, there are other podcasts for that.
yeah.
The last one is you asked me about, as same episode we were discussing cryptocurrencies. You asked me about credit unions and being lended to by the Federal Reserve.
Okay. I have vague memories of this.
Yeah. The answer I gave you at the time is the difference is how they're insured. Some credit unions are insured federally. Some are insured by the state. Some banks are insured federally. That's where, like, if you go into a bank, you'll see member FDIC.
Right.
You'll also see member NCUA. If you go to credit unions, that's sort of the federal level insurance for credit unions. It's basically the FDIC for credit unions.
Okay. So it's a regulatory and insurance agency for credit unions?
Yep, exactly.
At the federal level?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a more complex system than that. Those are kind of the basics. But for the purpose of the episode, we were talking about the Federal Reserve and how the Federal Reserve regulates the monetary supply in the U.S., and they do that by setting the fiscal policy, or monetary policy, which applies to all of those different banks and credit unions across the board. That dictates it. Those policies are just enforced by different agencies like the FDIC and NCUA.
Okay, so the NCUA is regulating credit unions.
Yeah, it's a regulatory agency pretty much specifically for credit unions.
Okay. My concern when you said that was that credit unions are just running rampant. Nobody's checking in on them.
Yeah. Well, and
it feels like that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. When you asked me at the time, I wasn't sure, and I had that same fear, like, oh man, are credit unions as bad as cryptocurrency? And the answer is no.
So if you have your money in a credit union, don't fret.
Yeah.
You are insured,
right?
Maybe
federally insured still. Like if that's the difference between a community credit union or a state credit union and a federal credit union is how they're insured. So great. Well, that's all I've got.
That's all I have too. Hopefully, as we continue along our podcasting path, these will become less necessary. I have a sneaking suspicion that is not the case.
Yeah, that's wishful thinking.
But hopefully that you enjoy these sort of silly, off-the-cuff conversations that we have about mistakes that we've made and how we've been stupid in the last couple episodes. It's always good for us to come together and talk about the dumb stuff we've done in the last month.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
we hope that you enjoy it.
Yeah, and it'll hold you over until the next episode.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have anything else, Kels.
No, I got nothing.
All right. Well, I'm Reese.
I'm Kelsey.
And this is Charismatic Megafauna.
Thanks for tuning in.